Well, hello and welcome back to a Champions League video. Yes, Europe's premier competition is back, but this time with a twist. As I'm sure you're well aware at this point, the Champions League has changed its format, adding a league phase to the mix, so that teams get to play even more games. I'm sure they're thrilled about that. The top 8 of this new European league will automatically qualify for the round of 16. Teams 9 through 24 will qualify for a playoff round, whereas teams 25 to 36 are eliminated outright. Yeah, no more group stage, just goes from the league phase to the round of 16. So rip those lovely group stage ties we've all loved to watch. They will play 8 clubs from 4 pots, which is 2 from each if you can't do maths. 4 fixtures at home and 4 fixtures away. Now, I'm not the biggest fan of this new format, but unfortunately that does seem to be the way things are going. In this video, I'll be giving you my predictions from 36 all the way up to who I think will top this league phase and will have a pretty good chance of just winning the entire thing. Without further ado, let's jump into it. So yeah, the first chunk we're going to be looking at are the teams that are just going to get eliminated outright. So that is teams from 25th all the way down to 36. And the team I've got finishing bottom of this league is Slovan Bratislava. Sorry lads, but someone had to be last. Slovan Bratislava are normally Conference League regulars, but after a very successful qualifying campaign, they've made it to this expanded competition. They've got some very difficult opponents, and I think they'll find the difficulty of the Champions League just a step too far. Unfortunately for the Slovakian side, I can't see them getting a win here. Elimination. And in 35th place, I've got Sparta Praha. The Czech side are back in the Champions League after a fairly lengthy absence and been handed a pretty tough draw upon their return, as they'll be facing some very strong sides. They've had some good results in order to make it to the Champions League, but I think the tournament proper may be a bridge too far for them. And in 34th place, I've got Sturm Graz. Last season's Austrian Bundesliga champions and current leaders haven't enjoyed much European success in their history. Now, they're no strangers to European football, but have never lifted a European trophy. Last season, they were dumped from the Europa League to the Conference League, and then got knocked out in the round of 16 for that competition. They've been given a decent draw, to be fair, but I don't see them having the quality needed to progress. It's elimination for the Austrians. And in 33rd place, I've got Red Star. Reigning Serbian champions Red Star Belgrade are back in the Champions League and have been given quite a difficult draw once again, including count them, two trips to the San Siro. Red Star are one of the illustrious few who have actually won a Champions League trophy, but recent football in Europe has not been so successful. They seem to have the Serbian League on lock every year, but that does not translate to European football. It'll be another tough campaign for the Serbians, and one I cannot see them progressing through. And in 32nd place, I've got Young Boys. The current residents of the Wankdorf Arena are back in the Champions League, and have been quite nice by their group to be fair. They've got some tough opponents, but do have some pretty nice draws as well. Young Boys do have the ability to shock clubs, and I do see them be able to grab at least one result in this tournament, but I don't have faith that the Swiss side will progress. Has there ever been a match between the old boys and the young boys? Just completely off topic, but that could be pretty interesting. But they're definitely getting eliminated here. Sorry lads. And in 31st place, I've got Brest. Stade Brestois had a very surprising season as they finished 3rd in Ligue 1, which I don't think anyone would have predicted. This is their first ever appearance in the Champions League. They've been handed some very tough fixtures, including both La Liga giants. Their season hasn't got off to the best of starts, and I can see them struggling in Europe. They've got a few teams that I've ranked lower than themselves, but fixtures will still be very tough, and unfortunately I can't see them progressing through this competition. And in 30th place, I've got Dinamo Zagreb. The reigning Croatian champions are back in the Champions League once again. Last time out they grabbed that surprising win over Chelsea before crashing out of the group, and we could see a very similar thing happening here. Minus the group stage exit, of course, because that no longer exists. They've been handed a very interesting draw with a mixture of some very tough teams, but some opponents that I could see them grabbing a result against. But unfortunately for the Croatians, I don't think it'll be enough to progress. And in 29th place, I've got Celtic. The reigning Scottish champions and former Champions League victors, Celtic, are once again back in the premier European competition. Despite their domestic dominance, they don't normally do that well in Europe, and I see the same happening here. They've been given a decent draw, in all fairness. There are definitely some teams they could grab results against, but I can't see them progressing through this competition. They also signed Kasper Schmeichel, which I completely missed somehow, but I'm not really plugged into Scottish transfer business, so it probably was pretty easy to miss, to be fair. Other than that, can't really see the Scottish champions progressing in Europe. They're not really that good in European competitions. And then in 28th place, I've got Club Brugge. The Belgian champions are back in the Champions League and looking to progress for once. But the draw hasn't been nice to them as they've got some pretty tough fixtures lined up. They lost some of their attacking talent in the summer, but looked to replace it quite well. But they let Zinkernagel go, which was not a good idea. I just really like Zinkernagel, to be honest. I'm not sure it's going to be enough for them to progress, and I do see them dropping out in 28th place. And in 27th place, I've got Bologna. Bologna had an impressive season last time around as they finished 5th in Serie A, which granted them a long-awaited return to the Champions League. They were in this competition back in 64-65, but only made it to the preliminary round, so can you really class that as qualifying? Bologna do not look like the side they were last season though. They've got a new manager and they've lost the likes of Xerxes and Calafiori. It's going to be a very tough season for Bologna, not only domestically, but I also think they're going to struggle in Europe as well, especially without those two quite important players and a new manager as well. Not looking good, unfortunately. And in 26th place, I've got Lille. Now, Lille are quite an interesting one. They lost Lenny Euro to Manchester United, which was a big loss, but they did sign Mbappe. Okay, maybe not the Mbappe, but they signed his brother, which has got to count for something at least. And the two brothers will face each other this season as they've drawn Real Madrid as one of their quite difficult clashes. Lille do have a solid side with some really good players like Jonathan David, but I don't think they'll have enough to progress through this competition. It might be a tight race coming up to these final fixtures where they could secure a playoff spot, but I don't think they've got it in them to do so. And in 25th place, I've got RB Salzburg. RB Salzburg are a tough one, but I've got them just missing out on progression. They finished runners-up in last season's Austrian Bundesliga, but only had 2 points separating them from Sturm Graz. They've been given a very tough set of fixtures, with some that could create some very interesting clashes as well. They're a side known for their young talent, but I don't think it'll be enough to make the playoffs this time around. Just missing out. Just like Lille, be very tight, but I don't think they'll make it. And then in 24th place, I've got Stuttgart. Stuttgart had a very impressive season last time around, as they finished runners-up in the Bundesliga, even if it was 17 points adrift of Leverkusen. Since then, their squad has been picked apart, using their top goal-scoring Gerassi, but they did sign Undav on a permanent, which is a good deal. Their fixtures aren't going to be easy, this is the Champions League after all, but there are some teams in there that they could feel confident in grabbing a result against. I think they'll just squeak into a playoff spot, but again, it'll be very tight. And in 23rd place, I've got Feyenoord. Feyenoord are adjusting to the post-slot era, and things haven't gone off to the best of starts, but they have managed to keep a lot of their quality players. Jimenez, you should be playing in the Garibaldi. I'll never forget this. It's quite a tough set of fixtures for them to contend with as well. It could end up being a very close campaign, but I do see them just securing the playoffs. And in 22nd place, I've got Benfica. Now, this may be a very rogue shout from me, but I don't have that much faith in Benfica, to be honest. They finished runners-up in the league last season and didn't enjoy much fortune in Europe either. And with success comes the big European vultures who have also nabbed some of their best players, most notably João Neves. They've got a very difficult set of fixtures awaiting them too, especially from the first two pots. There are some teams in here that they should be beating, but we don't know which Benfica will show up. Either way though, I do see them qualifying, but it could be a lot higher, or it could be even lower. We'll never know. And then in 21st place, I've got RB Leipzig. I have the other Red Bull side progressing into the playoffs. Leipzig have been handed a very difficult draw, facing many strong teams, but something just tells me they have the quality needed to progress. They beat Leverkusen on the opening day of the Bundesliga, and have got off to an unbeaten start themselves. Again, they have lost some key players, but they always find good replacements, and I see them making the playoffs this time around. And in 20th place, I've got Shakhtar Donetsk. I've got the reigning Ukrainian champions securing a playoff spot. Their season hasn't got off to the best of starts, as they currently find themselves in 9th, but I think they'll still hit form as they normally do and walk the Ukrainian league once again. Despite the shaky start, I do see them picking up form coming into Europe. Their draw is also looking pretty decent too. With some teams, they should be able to give a good run for their money. I do see them progressing to the playoffs. And in 19th place, I've got Monaco. Last season's Ligue 1 runners-up Monaco have made a return to the Champions League and have been handed a pretty decent draw, all things considered. They have lost a few important players from last season, but have also brought in a lot of players to really reinforce their team. I do think they've got enough about them to land a playoff spot. It's probably not going to be an easy campaign. This is the Champions League after all, but I'm sure they'll progress to the playoffs nonetheless. And in 18th place, I've got Girona. Girona had a surprising season last year, and were, for a good chunk of it, top of La Liga. But in the end, they fell away and finished third. This is the Spanish side's first appearance in the Champions League, but unfortunately they'll be without some of that exciting talent that served them so well last season. Their draw is decent, and they've done some good business over the summer, so they should be confident they can secure a playoff spot and make the most of this first ever Champions League competition they've experienced. And in 17th place, I've got PSV. PSV enjoyed a very successful season last year as they won the league, only losing one game all season and drawing 4. They've also had a very bright start to the season as well, currently being the only unbeaten side. Dominance domestically though doesn't always translate to a good performance in Europe. They have been handed a decent draw, and with the great form they're in, that confidence should be high, and they should be confident they can secure a playoff spot. Very good attacking side, scoring lots of goals, so should make for an interesting European campaign to say the least. And then in 16th place, I've got Atalanta. Europa League champions, Atalanta enjoyed quite a successful campaign last season, as it also finished 4th in Serie A. This season hasn't gone off to a great start, and some key players do look to be injured for this competition, and that's not even mentioning their summer departures. Again though, they've had a pretty decent draw. Yep, they will be facing both Spanish giants, but they have some fairly decent draws after that, which they can look to build and hopefully get a qualifying spot. They do have what it takes to secure a playoff spot. They're one of the few teams to beat Leverkusen last season as well, so they've got the quality there. They just need to show it in the Champions League, which I think they will. And then in 15th place, I've got AC Milan. AC Milan are the second most successful club in the Champions League, but are a far cry from those amazing teams of years gone by. They finished runners-up last season, 19 points adrift of their city rivals as well. They've had a slow revival. You know, they won Serie A a few years back, but then sunk back into a little bit of mediocrity. And they've not enjoyed a good start to the current campaign either, but do have quite a strong squad that I'm sure can compete in Europe. Their draw is decent. There are some tough fixtures, which will make this a rough ride for the Rossoneri, but I think they have what it takes to secure a playoff spot nonetheless. And then in 14th place, I've got Aston Villa. It's another former Champions League winner back in the competition for the first time since the 82-83 season, after a very impressive domestic campaign. Unai Emery has gone the club playing some very good football, and they've been very busy in the summer as well. They have seen some important players depart, but have also brought in some quality to replace those departures, and really improve their depth as well. Their draw looks pretty decent as well. They should give most of those teams a good run for their money. It's going to be tough for them to balance their domestic campaign with the Champions League. They have played European football before, although not to this level. But I think they've got enough in the tank to secure a playoff spot, and maybe even go deep in Europe. You never know. And then in 13th place, I've got Sporting Club de Portugal. This might be enough of a rogue shout from me, but I think that the reigning Portuguese champions have what it takes to secure a playoff spot. Their draw is looking quite nice for them as well, with only a few tough opponents sprinkled in. But I think they should be confident with most of those fixtures. And that's not even mentioning Gyökeres, who is an absolute beast of a striker, one of the best in Europe. He's already cooking this season and was phenomenal last season as well. What I would do to have him in the Garibaldi, you do not understand, man. That is a quality player. Very solid side, and possibly one that could be pushing for an automatic spot, especially with Gyökeres in the form he's in. He's going to be very special for them this season, I reckon, especially in Europe. And in 12th place, I've got Bayer Leverkusen. Last season's German champions went unbeaten in the league as they ended the Bayern dominance in spectacular fashion. And they've had a decent start to the season as well, but will not be going unbeaten this time around. They've been handed a fairly tough draw, but kept a hold of their manager and many of their important players as well, so I can see them kicking off from last season and, you know, progressing through the Champions League. Do I see them keeping their last minute look from last season? I don't think so, but they should have some success in Europe and secure a playoff spot. And then in 11th place, I've got PSG. Now this could be a very rogue shout from me, but I've got an Mbappé-less PSG finishing just outside of the automatics. The reigning French champions are currently top of Ligue 1, but there's no denying there's still some talent throughout their side. I do think they're struggling without Mbappé though. He was immense for them last season and really dragged them through quite a few games. And they've also been handed quite a tough draw as well, with a lot of chances that they could slip up and drop points, which is what I expect them to do. I do think they'll secure a playoff spot, but I don't think they have enough in the tank to progress automatically. No Mbappés, no party. They lost both Mbappés as well. Not just Kylian, but his brother as well. 2 Mbappés gone in the blink of an eye. And then in 10th place, I've got Atletico Madrid. I can see Atleti missing out on an automatic spot. They've been very active in the summer window, with their biggest signing being that of Julian Alvarez from Manchester City, but he's not really enjoyed a great start to life in Spain. They also have a very doable group with Simeone at the helm. I'm sure they'll perform well, but he does normally do well in knockout competitions. This is the league phase. Will he do as well as he has done in the past? I'm not too sure. And yeah, I don't see him grabbing an automatic spot. I may be underestimating the Spanish side, but I don't think they have what it takes to secure automatic qualification. Not this time around at least. And in 9th place, I've got Arsenal. This might be another rogue shout from me, but I've got Arsenal just missing out on an automatic spot. It looks like a very doable group for Arsenal with the way they've been playing in previous seasons, and they should be looking to secure an automatic spot. But I think that there's just a few teams in there that may be able to surprise Arsenal. They don't normally fare that well in Europe, to be honest, and you know, there's a few sides in here that could throw up a few banana skins for them. They're a very solid side, don't get me wrong. They're playing brilliant football under Arteta. There's no doubt about that. But something is telling me they'll just bottle an automatic spot. I don't know what it is, but I just don't know if they can secure automatics this season. You never know though. They are a very good team and are well capable of surprising us. Well, me at least. Alright, moving on to those automatic spots now, and in 8th place I've got Inter Milan. My first automatic qualifying side will be Inter Milan. The current Italian champions have enjoyed a bright start to the season as they find themselves top of the league once again. Their draw is fairly tough though, but only contains a handful of teams that could really give them a tough game. Their attacking force is firing once again and will cause many teams a lot of problems. They should have everything they need to succeed and qualify. I don't think they'll do so in the upper echelons, but an 8th place finish is not bad. That's automatic qualification. They can build on that throughout the campaign. And in 7th place, I've got Barcelona. Now, it was between Barca and Inter for that 8th spot, but I think Barcelona just have what it takes to finish above their Italian opponents. Last season's La Liga runners-up and current league toppers are the first Spanish side I've got securing an automatic spot. Things are looking good for Barca on the footballing side of things. We'll just ignore the monetary issues they're having. That doesn't matter. Football is what we're talking about. Flick is a good manager and things have gotten off to a good start this season. Their draw has been very kind with only a few teams that they should be worried about. You know, Bayern Munich are haunting them once again. But other than that, they should be pretty confident with many of their fixtures and should secure an automatic spot with some ease, I reckon. And then in 6th place, I've got Dortmund. Dortmund are my first German side qualifying for an automatic spot. They've been given a favourable draw and should feel confident in picking up the needed points to secure automatics. They didn't enjoy a great domestic campaign last season, but did make the Champions League final, only falling to Real Madrid, which, you know, that's expected, to be honest. They may have lost Füllkrug, who was on fire last season, but did sign Guirassy from Stuttgart, who was also on fire in Germany, as well as seeing Gross return from Brighton. Things are looking good for Dortmund. They should have what it takes to secure an automatic spot, and maybe with a little bit of ease as well. And then in 5th place, I've got Liverpool. Liverpool are back in the Champions League, but this time it's without Klopp. Arne Slot has taken charge of Liverpool, and they're already looking pretty good. They barely did any business in the window, only bringing in one player they're actually going to use, but that hasn't affected their solid start to the Premier League. They've got some very good attacking options, very good depth. They're cooking, man. They're cooking. Their draw is decent as well. A couple of tough sides to face, but overall, a set of fixtures they should feel confident in progressing with. And in 4th place, I've got Juventus. Juve are back in the Champions League football, and we're hoping this campaign wasn't as underwhelming as their recent appearances. They pried Bologna's successful manager away from them, and have started the season brightly. Their draw is looking pretty favourable with them as well, with only 1 or 2 teams that they could struggle against. But overall, I see them qualifying and maybe doing so quite comfortably. And then in 3rd place, I've got Bayern Munich. Despite their domestic dominance coming to an abrupt end last season as they finished 3rd, I do see Bayern doing well in Europe. I mean, they did pretty well as last season, reaching the semi-finals if I'm not mistaken. They've appointed Vincent Kompany after he got Burnley relegated, which was a very interesting move. But to be fair, they've started the season pretty brightly and they're still unbeaten after their first 2 fixtures, which is pretty good. You know who else is unbeaten? Nottingham Forest. Their draw looks quite kind for them as well, with only maybe 1 or 2 stumbling blocks, but I do see them progressing automatically onto the round of 16. Harry Kane, he should be cooking with some of these teams he's facing, man. I'm seeing that maybe a league phase golden boot in his future, but will he get a trophy? That's the real question. And in 2nd place, I've got Manchester City. The current champions of England are one of the best sides in Europe, despite only winning a single UCL crown. They boast one of the best managers in the world football, as well as the most prolific strikers up top as well. Their draw looks kind, and should be one they can easily progress with. They could easily top the league phase, but I think there's one more team that is just a little bit better than them, and that is Real Madrid. Yes, I've got Real Madrid topping the league phase. Last season's champions of Europe and Spain, Real Madrid always expect to do well in Europe. They're the most successful European side after all. This should be the one they do well in. I suspect they'll top the league phase, you know. They're a side that is just chock full of quality, and that's only been further increased in the summer, and that's with the likes of Endrick and Mbappe joining the club. They haven't gone off to the best of starts domestically, but Europe is their bread and butter, and they should easily be qualifying for the round of 16. It'll be very disappointing if they don't. But there's a little bit off about Real Madrid, to be fair. You know, Cruz has left and things aren't clicking as much as you'd expect for Real Madrid at this point in the season. But like I said, Europe's their bread and butter. They'll do well no matter what. They've got a quality side. They should be progressing at the top of the league. Let's be real. So yeah, those are my Champions League phase predictions. Like I said, I'm not really a fan of this new format. It was a pain to predict, but I think I've done pretty well. I do want to say, each prediction section has been broken into chunks. If I don't get every position right, I'm hoping I at least get the teams in the right chunk of the league. So, you know, the automatics, the playoffs, and the eliminations. Hopefully, if I get those correct, I'll be happy. But yes, it's a very interesting Champions League tournament this time around. Not really a fan of the league phase, but hey, it may cook. You never know. We'll see how we do. Jumping straight to the round of 16 after the league phase will be very interesting, but I think I'll have more faith in my predictions there than this very interesting league phase. I don't like it, but there's not much I can do at this point. It's just a European Super League, realistically. But yeah, I've been O2GT. Those have been my European predictions for this season. Hopefully, I get the teams in the right place. That's all I want. I don't care about positions. Just put them in the right group. I'll be happy. I'll see you guys in the next video. Peace.